Welcome to a time before dating apps, dinner reservations, and late-night texting. A time when love was woven into the rhythms of land, law, and religion. The Middle Ages, in this era stretching roughly from the 5th to the 15th century, relationships were governed not by individual whim or emotion, but by custom, class, and the often heavy hands of both family and church. In most of medieval Europe, particularly among the nobility, marriages were not simply personal unions, but strategic alliances designed to secure power, land, and status across generations. Love, while celebrated in song and story, was rarely the reason for marriage. Instead, it was something that people hoped might grow with time, more simply something they learned to live without. A father's blessing was more than symbolic. He had legal control over whom his daughter could marry, and in some cases, a match could be arranged in early childhood and finalized by adolescence. Mothers were often involved in preparing their daughters for marriage, teaching them how to manage a household, how to remain modest, and how to attract suitors through grace and obedience, and always with an eye toward preserving the honor of both parties. Courtship, if it occurred at all, was a public affair involving the careful supervision of family members, friends, or community elders. Young men might express romantic interest through symbolic gestures, a small gift of lace or fruit, a carved wooden charm, or a whispered poem recited during a festival. Among the nobility, courtly love emerged as a stylized, idealized form of romantic devotion where knights pledged loyalty and admiration to often unattainable noblewomen, frequently married to other men. These relationships, more theatrical than physical, revolved around chivalric behavior, poetry, music, and secret longing, and they became a favorite theme of medieval literature. In the world of peasants and tradespeople, courtship was more pragmatic, but no less meaningful. Often beginning during shared labor, market days, or community festivals like May Day or harvest celebrations, and a day after which they could marry formally or separate without dishonor. Partners might get to know each other while helping with sheep shearing, dancing around a maypole, or standing in line for church services. Simple moments where glances carried weight and conversation was sparse but significant. And breaking them could bring social stigma, legal conflict, and even the loss of promised dowries or gifts. Dancing was one of the few socially acceptable ways for unmarried people to interact physically in public. And festivals were rare occasions where emotions might be quietly explored. And gossip was a powerful force capable of ending a courtship before it truly began. Still, even holding hands could be scandalous if done without permission. Among working-class communities, relationships often began with a concept called hand fasting, a public engagement or temporary trial marriage. Binding the couple for a year, this practice, sometimes recognized by local customs or courts, gave couples a chance to test compatibility before the church or family sealed their future. In many towns, betrothals were binding contracts, witnessed by community members. Dowries, money, or goods brought by the bride to the marriage were negotiated carefully. A larger dowry could make a woman more desirable, regardless of her personality or preferences. Chastity was not only a virtue, but a legal and spiritual requirement. If a woman was found to have had premarital relations, it could damage her reputation and future prospects significantly. Nevertheless, premarital intimacy did happen, and if it resulted in pregnancy, the couple was often forced into a quick marriage ceremony, sometimes before a priest, but often with only verbal vows, known as marriage per verba depressity. In medieval canon law, saying "I take you as my wife" in front of witnesses could be as binding as a formal church wedding. It's creating legal complications that sometimes lasted for years. For those who were illiterate, tokens such as shared bread, cohabitation, or even the exchange of cloaks could stand in for verbal promises and signal a shift in status to the wider community. While formal love letters existed among the educated, most medieval couples communicated through shared glances, visits during festivals, or encoded gestures such as the gift of a rosemary sprig, symbolizing remembrance. A young man might pass by a woman's home each morning on the way to market, or sing a folk song at her window during evening chores. Small rituals that slowly built recognition and trust. In villages, relationships developed organically, sometimes over years, especially in places where families lived close together and children grew up side by side. Marriage for love was not impossible, especially among peasants who had fewer legal restrictions and less at stake. But even then, social approval remained essential. If a couple wanted to wed, both families had to consent, and sometimes negotiations over land, tools, livestock, or inheritance could delay the process indefinitely. In some cases, community elders or clergy mediated disputes between families or clarified unclear promises made during courtship. The church, which held immense power, emphasized the sacramental nature of marriage and discouraged casual unions. Priests often reminded couples of their duty to marry for stability, not passion. Yet even within the walls of monasteries and parishes, stories of forbidden love, secret meetings, and runaway marriages echoed through the generations. Among noble families, young women were sometimes sent to convents if no suitable match could be arranged or if they refused a chosen suitor. While sons were expected to seek titles, military honors, or ecclesiastical roles, but even then, love often found a way, and medieval literature is full of tales where stable boys fell for noble daughters, or knights defied duty for the love of a common girl. Not all unions were arranged or traditional, some were clandestine, with lovers meeting under cover of darkness or fleeing to distant villages to marry outside their family's reach. Allowing for marriages by consent without priestly blessing, at least until the 16th century reforms. Others involved years of patient courtship, letters hidden in baskets of bread, or silent walks shared after vespers in the monastery garden. Marriage laws varied by region, and in some parts of Europe, local customs were more relaxed than formal church doctrine. With lute songs, ballads, and even coded lyrics passed between lovers or sung by wandering minstrels in noble courts and village inns. An educated clergy, with sonnets and verses passed through trusted messengers or written anonymously and left in books or chapels. Still, public recognition remained key, and without community acknowledgement, a couple's union could be considered illegitimate. Music played an important role in medieval courtship. Many songs focused on unfulfilled love, lost opportunities, or the beauty of patience, a reflection of how slowly and carefully love had to unfold in medieval society. Clothing also played a symbolic role. Women might wear ribbons gifted by their suitor, and men might display a token from their beloved during tournaments or festivals. These traditions carried meaning and risk. To accept a token was to publicly acknowledge affection, which could bring honor or shame, depending on the outcome. Poetry, too, was a language of love, especially among nobles. People find a way to reach for one another, from carved tokens to whispered verses, from hand fastings to stolen glances. The history of dating in the Middle Ages is not just a story of rules, but a story of resilience. These poems often spoke of longing, loyalty, or divine beauty, blending the spiritual with the romantic in ways that resonated deeply with the medieval worldview. Over time, love and marriage slowly began to shift, especially by the late Middle Ages, as urbanization, trade, and changing religious thought gave individuals more freedom of choice. But for most of the medieval period, love was less a private spark and more a public ritual, shaped by duty, endurance, and deep-rooted tradition. Despite the many rules and barriers, people still dreamed of love not just for status or safety, but for warmth, companionship, and meaning. And in the quiet corners of castles and cottages alike, eyes met, songs were sung, and stories began. The medieval world may seem distant now, but the human longing for connection remains unchanged in every age, and so it reminds us that even in a world bound by duty and tradition, the heart still hoped, still waited, and still loved.